This is NSR.
Welcome to Newcastle Student Radio. Today with me, Rachel Hatherley, we have a very special guest with us. Having sold 140 million records, received 4 Grammy nominations, and has found himself in the Guinness World of Records for having his single Release Me in the charts for a consecutive 56 weeks. I'm of course talking about the legendary Engelbert Humperdinck. Welcome to Newcastle Student Radio.
The first question you asked is, why that name? Well, it's been around for a long time, I doubt it. It's been around since 1965, when my manager, Gordon Mills, decided to remove the name Arnold George Dorsey and turn it into Engelbert Humperdinck, which is a very unusual and long name. Not just to sign, but to put up on a marquee. And so therefore, it was very lucky for me to change the name because it was instrumental in making me famous or known around the world, because people wanted to know what an Engelbert Humperdinck was. And that when they found out he had a voice and he had a hit record like Release Me, it was very useful.
Definitely did you well.
Now, the second question you asked about was my career spanned for it's spanned for nearly 5 decades now. And it's been a very eventful journey for me, and I hope it never ends. We travel the world every year. Every year we've had world tours every year, except 2020. 2020 has been it's good to go down in history as being a year that never happened, but certain disastrous things happened during it.
A bit of an outlier.
The fact that we have now found a remedy for this terrible virus that's been, crucifying nations around the world and closing every door of every country, then it's a historical event, really. And now we've come up with a vaccine. Hopefully, they'll open the doors for 2021.
Definitely. So I believe just this year, you've still been busy. You have released your latest EP, Sentiments. And if I'm not wrong, I think you were saying that Sentiments actually has quite a few songs related to 2020.
Yeah. Well, I've decided to put out this album because it's very much of today. It's very informative of what's happening in today. One World that I recorded is nothing to do with politics. It's just a fact that I wanted the world to be united, and I think this pandemic has brought that about because everyone is trying to help each other with the vaccines and trying to open the doors to the world again. And I think One World is very apropos for that particular situation. And the second song is called Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, which is an Elton John song. And when he wrote it way back, he wrote it with the intentions of giving it to Engelbert Humperdinck. But for some reason or the other, it didn't come to pass. So he recorded it himself, and it's one of his biggest hits. And it was amazing, that this song didn't come into my possession. I would have loved it to have recorded it. But all these many years later, I decided to go along and record it myself. And I hope people like my rendition of Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, competing with the great Elton John.
I have to say it was one of my favourites on the album. On Sentiments as well, we have your duet of Can't Help Falling in Love, which you did with Janet Devlin.
Oh, she was a charming young lady that I met 3 years ago when I was performing in London at on Shaftesbury Avenue at a theatre, and she came to see the show. And we met backstage, and we had pictures taken together, and I saw her version on X Factor, when she sang on X Factor. I saw that, and I thought, fantastic. You've got a lovely voice, a very different style, and definitely a star in the making at that particular time. And now she's opened up and she's got her own following, and when we share the same producer, And when my producer asked me to do this duet with her, I was delighted because she's a very charming and wonderful girl. And so I hope people like the versions that we put out.
Yeah, it's amazing. I definitely agree. She's got definitely a very distinct, unique voice.
Yeah, thank you. We premiered it last week on my YouTube channel, and after we watched it together, the audience and myself watched it together. Audience from around the world. They sent their comments, and I was reading their comments on the side, of the computer, and about 50 countries around the world saw that video, and they were all making comments which were very flattering, if you wanted to know the truth. And I was very with them. And when you see countries like Cuba and South America, Argentina, and Iceland, from all over the world, it was just and even Arabia, and it was just remarkable that all these countries know me, this fella, and I loved it. I loved being on that and reading all the comments. It's very morale boosting, Rachel, to say the least.
It's quite amazing, actually. I mean, of course, it's been an awful year, but the amount we've been able to stay connected, especially with your job, that you can still connect with your fans to that extent through social media, it's really quite lucky. So I was also wondering, because of course we're interviewing you from Newcastle. Very early on in your career, you had the opportunity to work with Jimi Hendrix. What can you say about that?
When Jimmy was being introduced into Europe, he came over there, and there was, some very wonderful people on the show. The Walker Brothers, and Cat Stevens. His name was Cat Stevens at the time, and Jimmy was appearing on the show with me as well, and it was just a remarkable time. It was a great cast, great to think that later on, I heard Jimmy was probably one of the greatest guitar players we've ever known, and singers and performers. He was a very kind and wonderful man. As a matter of fact, he was wearing this kind of military jacket, and I said to him, "Jimmy, that's a nice jacket. Did you want it, man?" And he started to take it off. I said, No, I didn't ask for that reason. But one day, my guitarist didn't show up, and I said, "I don't know what I'm going to do." Jimmy said, "Don't worry, man. I'll play for you." And that was it's a historical moment.
It's quite something, that. Yeah, he's quite an amazing artist, and he often plays actually in Newcastle in areas such as Keating and Boston on Chillingham Road, so he's quite something to us as well. And I was thinking as well, of course, more recently in your career, you've covered the likes of Ed Sheeran and Bruno Mars. What can you say about that? Do they have like a significance to you, or do you see yourself in them?
Well, actually, the song about Bruno Mars I've been doing in my show, and it's getting a great response. I didn't do Ed Sheeran's because, it's a little difficult to sing live on stage. But Bruno Mars' song was very good, and it's a whole different version to what he does. And the people seem to love it, so I kept it. I kept it as one of the big numbers in my show.
I think you said that Ariana Grande was like a very interesting artist to you, and I wanted to know why that was.
Yeah, I like Ariana Grande because she's got everything that anybody wants to see that wants to see on stage or on TV. She's a very good live performer. Sometimes when you're a recording artist, you're not that great on stage, but she's an all-rounder, which is actually remarkable. A good recording artist, a good visual artist, a good performer, and it's one of my favorites.
All in one, yeah. So, of course, separate to your music, you are also a poet, and you often share it on social media on your Tuesday News Days, your poems that you have. I wanted to ask you whether, as a musician, do you sometimes write a song, it can sometimes become one of your poems, or do you ever write a poem which then turns into one of your songs, or are they completely separate?
I might have never turned into song. My poems are about what's going on at the moment, time, or if I'm doing a crossword, which I do too every morning. If I see a word that is kind of I could build a poem around, I do that, and that's how I start my poetry. And I write some free verse, but mostly I write in rhyme. But free verse is very difficult to write. Like, for instance, you want to hear one of my poems?
Go for it, yeah.
Okay, here it is. Silence fell upon the moment, nary a word to find, where streets filled with happy sound soon lay unloved and undefined. How sad of such a happy throng to suddenly disappear into a void of emptiness, a barren atmosphere. 'Twas an instant, not an errant thought, that brought the mind to wander, with all the problems of the world brings forth a winter shiver. So if you're feeling lonely and fear is in your heart, call upon your guardian angel. He's your soldier in the dark. As tender words ring out and say, let suffering be no more, and praise the Lord when you behold your guardian angel, your holy sentry, standing at your door.
That's amazing.
Well, it's very momentary, it's about today, when this sort of thing came to pass, I thought I'd write something about it, because the streets were empty. At one particular time, there were no cars on the street, nothing to be heard, not a sound, and it was quite frightening. In fact, you thought, where has everybody gone? When you did go out. And
yeah, it felt very, very lonely. It was the same here in England. It was just in about a 1 week turnaround, what was once so busy, the street was just like literally desolate ghost town. It was so strange. So on that note, with all of your decades of wisdom, what advice would you give to a young musician, or a musician in general, starting out in the industry?
Well, be cautious, be enthusiastic, love what you're doing, and don't just do it for the sake of the money. Do it for the sake of love, And I that's my feeling. But be cautious about, who handles your career, etc. One thing and another like that. And I've been very fortunate, so therefore, I just have to thank the Lord for my small mercies.
And our last question for you tonight is, of course, with 2020 and the strange old year that it's been, we have seen the music industry and touring turned on its head. So in the last few months, we've seen socially distanced concerts, online concerts, and even if you might have seen the bubble concerts in Germany. Are any of these things something you would consider, or are you planning on waiting until everything calms down a little bit before you head back on the road and stuff?
I don't know. We might start before May, all being well, because we were already booking venues for 2021, so therefore,
fingers crossed.
We're bringing it to the UK as well, as I'm being informed.
That's so exciting. Fingers crossed for you then. I think we all really want our concerts back. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been such an honour for us.
All right, my dear.
All right, well, have a lovely Christmas time and enjoy the LA sunshine.
NSR.